Welcome. So I'll do an introduction first. My name's Andy Meyer. I am the director of the archives here at North Park University, and I'll be the moderator of this online event. So a few housekeeping notes. This event will be recorded and it will be made available following the presentation today. We ask that you keep yourself muted until the question and answer time, and then you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask a question. And I'll monitor the chat as well. So if you have a technical problem, feel free to put that in the chat or send me a message. And then if you prefer during the question and answer time, you can type out a question in the chat and I'll read it aloud for our presenters to answer. So that's me. This is the fourth installment in a series of online conversations created to celebrate the 90th anniversary of the Covenant Archives and Historical Library. Recordings of those previous conversations, which were related to the Paul Carlson Partnership, Swedish Covenant Hospital, and North Park University, are all available on the seminary's website. And I think we'll send out a link after this so everyone can have access to those. So happy 90 years. 90 years is a long time, and we're happy to celebrate this milestone of 90 years of organizing, describing, and preserving records related to the history of the Evangelical Covenant Church. But a few quick notes on that. This 90th year celebrates kind of the formal work that's been done by the Commission on Covenant History and by people that have had the title of archivist. But the work of preserving the history of the Covenant Church has gone far longer than 90 years and by countless people. So I want to acknowledge we're kind of happy to celebrate 90 years, but the work goes far beyond those narrow formal capacities. And second, the point of this work is not merely to organize, describe, and preserve records. The point is to serve as a living memory, one where access and engagement with archival resources bring life and meaning and direction to the current and to the future ministries of the Covenant Church. So we're not highlighting archival collections for this 90th anniversary celebration. We're trying to highlight some of the ways that researchers, either professional historians or normal Covenanters, have engaged with archival resources to do the work of history. So it's with that very lengthy preamble, I want to introduce Bonnie and Bryce Nelson. They recently co-authored the book For God's Glory, the story, or excuse me, I'm so caught on the pietist slogan, I got the title wrong. The book is titled For Neighbors Good, the story of covenant world relief and development. They will be sharing about their experience doing research and writing that book. So with that, I'll turn it over to Bonnie and Bryce.
Thanks, Andy. For the next few minutes, we'd like to give you an overview of, first of all, what the project was and how it came about, and then secondly, how we used Covenant Archives to write this book. And indeed, it's not just Covenant Archives, it's Covenant Archives and Andy who gave us good help. I think one of the real points here is that we wrote this book and used Covenant Archives considerably, but we never left Seattle. And the point of that is that the archives these days, with the digital collections, the Covenant Archives is so good that you can find so much material in it without physically going there. You go there for other reasons, but it is entirely possible to do what we did by not physically going to the archives. Background of this project is that Dave Huseby and Mark Swanson were together on a trip in Kenya. Dave Huseby was director of Covenant World Relief and Development. Mark Swanson was on the advisory team. And Dave Huseby, in effect, said to Mark, I wish we had a history of Covenant World Relief. And Mark knew us and knew the book that we had written a few years earlier on the 5 camps in the Pacific Northwest This is the book Cascade Camp and Conference Center. And Mark said, why don't you ask Bryce and Bonnie Nelson, see if they do something like that. The backstory was that we were retired. I had a PhD from the University of Washington in history, so I knew how to do these things. Uh, and so Dave Hughesby got interested. He talked with Al Tazan, who was his supervisor, and that's how this project then came about. We spent the first, well, let me back up. We said yes that we would do it, um, in part because of a lifelong friendship with Jim Sunholm and longtime friendship with Glenn and Sharon Palmberg. And the question, I suppose, in our mind was, what were those people doing when they were running Covenant World Relief? We sort of decided that maybe we should look into this and see if we can understand the story. Um, it took us probably the first couple of years to just figure out what the question was, what the overview of the story really was. And we did that largely with paper documents first. We got a lot of help from Carolyn Peitzel, who formerly worked at Covenant headquarters, who put a lot of key documents together and sent them to us. And then after a few years, Chrissy Palmerly sent us digitally um, a lot of things like notes and minutes and documents and things like that. And then Dave Hughesby talked to us a lot. So it took us several years to get the chronology straight, to understand who did what, when they did it. And that was probably the hardest background part. The most time consuming was to try to figure out when things happened. And we did that largely with paper that some people gave us, some digital material, and then Dave Hughesby. There's a sense in which we should have, maybe could have visited Covenant Archives, but we never did because um, we didn't know enough to go and actually be productive in the archives for multiple years. And I think that's a relevant point here is that you have to first figure the story out. Otherwise, you can waste a lot of time or spend a lot of time just sort of looking around in the archives. You need to know um, whose papers you need to look in and during what years and what you're looking for. And it took us a long time to get to the point where we actually had this story roughed out. Now, because we did it the way we did it, we wrote a lot of what historians call top-down history, meaning we wrote it from sort of official paper, official documents. And I think had we later in the project physically gone to the Covenant archives and had we found the right people's papers, we might have found more personal interest stories or some more direct quotes, but we didn't do that. We stayed we stayed local. Um, it's really, really important that Covenant Archives has such a good digital collection. We wrote this thing together using Dropbox. We have our computers on different floors in our house. Everything we did, we put into Dropbox. And we either acquired material for notes by copying and pasting out of Covenant Archives digital materials, or if we had paper, we scanned it. And the point, of course, is that what we were doing was building a large collection of digital material so that we were able to retrieve what we wanted when we started the writing process. So the very fact that all these things that Bonnie's now going to talk about have been digitized is so important for the research process because you don't want to sit there and rekey pages and paragraphs and all that, but you do want to copy, paste, or somehow get it that way.
So a lot of information we were able to find in Covenant Archives without leaving Seattle. So this is a list of the digital collections from Covenant Archives that we used. And I'm going to show how I found them, and we're going to talk about four of them. So the Covenant Church anniversary books are in there. All the Covenant companions for a lot of years. Friends of World Mission brochures are scanned in there. The Frisk collection of Alaska mission journals, of Covenant literature, of Covenant yearbooks, and a publication called Our Covenant. And then one of the main things that I'll talk about is the historical photograph collection. Those four named Frisk collection are named after Donald Frisk, who was a theology professor in the seminary at North Park. So if you're interested in looking at the collections, you would go to Covenant Archives and find this page called Archival Collections. I've circled the little top point in the middle of the screen called Digital Collections. And underneath that, on this screen, are some of the collections. But I would suggest going to the whole list of digital collections, and you will get to see if it will move. This list of more than 20 digital collections. And like I said, we used 8 of them, and I'm going to focus on first the Covenant Companion. So if you click on Covenant Companion in that long list, you'll get this screen, and next to the little graphic up there is a web address that you should click on, and that will bring you to this page. So the Covenant Companion is scanned from 1959 to 2018, and there may be some more current ones, but you can either search by the year, which is over on the left-hand side of the screen, or you can put up where I've highlighted up on the right-hand side toward the top, and look for articles by Jim Sunholm or Dave Hughesby, and I even found an article that I wrote in 1972. So in the book, we used some pictures from Covenant Companion, like a picture of Glenn Palmberg when he was elected president, is in the book that we wrote. And also we read a lot of articles from the Companion. So Bryce is going to talk about using the collection of Covenant literature.
So there's a significant number of books that are in the Frisk collection of Covenant literature. And basically, these are books that are really hard to find, and they've now been scanned and put in there. So, you know, it's unrealistic to think that you can physically find these books somewhere. I happen to have academic library privileges, so I could get most of these through an interlibrary loan process, but not everybody has those kind of connections. So this is so much better than to realize that almost everything that has anything to do with a covenant church has been scanned and put in here, and you can then open it up, look at it, and as I said earlier, copy and paste the kind of information you want as you're taking notes. So this was absolutely gold for us. I mean, this was the kind of contextual work because there's so many books that have some history on them, have some years on them that I didn't even know about, but I found to be really helpful in trying to understand their overall questions that we were dealing with. So the Frisk collection of these, I will say, older covenant books, there's some newer ones in here too, is just absolutely crucial to what we were able to do. Um, there's also the collection of covenant yearbooks. If you don't happen to have paper copies of yearbooks that go way back, this is where you find them. And again, all of these yearbooks have been digitized, and this also was really, really significant for us because this is where there are reports from people involved in missions, Covenant World Relief, et cetera, et cetera. And this is where you follow the money and all the rest of it. So the annual yearbooks, this is what we spent the first few years looking at, trying to understand this topic. And these things are likewise really, really significant and really crucial.
This is how you browse.
Um,
That's still the first page of the Covenant yearbooks.
okay, so these are the Covenant yearbooks. One way to browse is simply if you know the date, you put it, you find it, you click on the little icon, and it gets you into the book.
Okay, the historical photograph collection. We realized early on that we would need a lot of photographs from the beginning of the covenant in about 1885. So I started looking through this collection. In order to access it, again, go to the link or the web address next to the photograph on this page, and it'll take you to this page. In that grayed out rectangle in the middle, it's browse collection. So click on that and you will get to this page. There are 500 pages of photographs that you could look through, but that would take you years. So the best thing to do again is up in the highlighted box in the top right hand, put in a subject that you're interested in. Don't click on what it says down below that box in little letters, advanced search. Don't click on that. That'll just take you somewhere you don't want to go. But anyway, I put in the word president, and that took it down to from 500 pages to 61 pages. Again, there's a subject topical on the left-hand side. On this page, you might get presidents of the North Park Academy Pep Club and presidents' houses. So you put in a word or a name that you're interested in finding a photograph about. So I put in Glenn Palmberg, and there are 3 pages of photos that have Glenn Palmberg in them. And some of them are candids. If you're going to use a photograph of a person, you should ask their permission to print it in a book. And there are also similar photos, like these two were both in that Glenn Palmberg list of photos. So, and the one on the right is a more of a close-up and has more names identified in that photo. Another example of what we were searching for was we looked under Alaska missions, and there were 36 pages, but we knew that there was a money that was contributed to buy an airplane for the work in Alaska. So I typed in the word airplane, and this photo is actually in the book. In order to capture the photo, I went to the highlighted space up there on top, and that downloads the photo. I put it onto my desktop, and then I was able to drag it into Dropbox. Thank you. And also, I was able to email photos to Andy and get a higher quality image to be printed in the book. Be sure to take notes of the names on the photos that you want to remember, because when you download a photo, it doesn't take the names with it. It's just the photo.
In summary, we were able to stay in Seattle, write this book, because the digital world enables you to do so much. And the Covenant Archives, the digital parts of the Covenant Archives, were absolutely crucial for us. Now, we also interviewed people. There was privately held material that people gave to us. And so there are multiple ways in which we ended up finding information, pulling things together. But really, without the Covenant Archives, the digital part of the Covenant Archives, I don't think could have even started this project. There are really going to be two versions of what we wrote. The one Covenant World Relief has published now, but what we wrote was much more of an academic version, and so it will, in a few months, also come out as an ebook, which will have not only complete text and the photos that we found, but it'll be full of endnotes, a really long bibliography, a number of appendices, and an index. So it'll be much more of a research-focused or academic-oriented version for people who are interested in that. So that's the overview of what we did and how we did it. Back to you, Andy.
Find my unmute button there. Thanks, Bryce. Thanks, Bonnie. It's easy for me to see flaws or shortcomings or things we could do. So it's really encouraging to hear how positive the digital collections were for you in your research. I will turn it over to Paul Swanson for a moment. Paul is the manager of operations for Covenant World Relief and Development. And Paul was, well, at least my read of it, was managing a lot of other kind of historical projects related to the 80th anniversary of Covenant World Relief and Development. So with that introduction, Paul, would you want to talk about some of those other aspects of the celebration and go from there?
Thanks, Andy, so much. Appreciate it. I would just echo so much of what Bryce and Bonnie said, in that just how helpful you and your staff are. I know a couple of them are even on here today, but I got to work with Sarah a little bit before she departed for the Swedish Museum, and then Rebecca here at the end. and even your student volunteers, always just so helpful and welcoming. And my experience at the archives was just absolutely wonderful. I did a lot of what Bryce and Bonnie said about working remote and searching the archives for finding different things. But I also did go to the archives on several occasions to physically look for some items. And it was really wonderful. My heritage is that I am the grandson, son, and brother of Covenant pastors. So kind of seeing all the different displays. Um, I could I could search in there, and my wife even came with me one time, and you could search different churches where my grandfather was, and those kind of things, and it was just so interesting, and you guys are so welcoming and accommodating to us, and I really appreciate that. Um, our project really prior to myself, Nils Clausen, who's our director, and Lindsay Watson, who works for Covenant Kids Congo and CWRD, all of us started working for CWRD after Bryce and Bonnie were commissioned to write this book. So we kind of picked things up with them midstream, and it was a wonderful experience to work and navigate this and to get it into print to where it is. And we're so thankful that the unabridged research version is going to be available as well. Finding out our 80th anniversary really came about because of this project. We didn't know when Covenant World Relief and Development had begun. We had an idea. We always knew that it was somewhere around the end of World War II, but we didn't really know an exact date. And so Bryce and Bonnie's research led us to say, like, hey, 1946 was the year, and in 2026 we will celebrate 80 years. That set three things in motion for us, actually four. One was the book, which was already being written, and we wanted to finish that book in time for our gala celebration, which happened now 2.5 weeks ago in Chicago. We had over 600 people attend our gala, and it was really fantastic. It was like a reunion for so many, and a chance to just see the history, chance to see the work of Bryce and Bonnie, and to have that unveiled at the same time. So through that process, there was a really cool instance, I think, that came up with Annie. We were searching for photos for film, photos for our annual calendar, and then photos for the book. And Andy came across a box of 1,000 slides from CWRD, historical slides. Some of them never really in print before. They were just part of slides. And so we converted all of those into photos, and we've used several of them in our annual calendar and several of them in the book. And so that was just really kind of neat to go back and see those. I grew up as a pastor's kid. One of the churches was Northbrook Covenant Church, where my dad served. And Cliff Bjorklund was one of the members there, who was just instrumental in starting Covenant World Relief and Development. To go back and see some of those photos of Cliff all over the world, that was just really neat for me to see and to experience. The video footage, there's a little segment in this documentary that we created. So there's a 30-minute documentary called Go and Do Likewise. I'm going to post into the chat here before I leave how to contact myself, how to get into the 80th website for our organization, where you could access the film. It's not currently there, but it will be shortly. And then how you can order the book if you'd like to order the book. So I'll give you all that information here in the chat at the end. But there's a segment in the book that just talks about the video archives and the canisters of film and how they used to distribute the films across the United States to pastors and churches. And it's literally like a library card on these film canisters, where one church would have it and then they would put down that they watched it, and then they would mail it to the next church, who would then show these reel-to-reel films that were made from CWRD. And Andy was instrumental in getting some of those converted into footage that our film producer could use. And so to go back and see films, Don and Sally Ingebrigtsen were there at the gala, and were able to see some footage of Milton. That was really cool. That was really neat to have as part of that documentary. Tim Ack is featured in there, and others that were instrumental in starting Covenant World Relief and Development that we could see in film as part of the documentary. Then we also had an art gallery, and artists from all over the United States donated works of art that were thematic to Covenant World Relief and Development. And as part of that art gallery, Andy and Rebecca were just so gracious to come down and bring some artifacts from the archives down to our art gallery and at the location in Chicago, at the Sheridan in Chicago, which was where the Midwinter Conference was, which is our event preceded that. And it's just so neat to see that kind of the history. One of the iconic symbols, I think, of Covenant World Relief and Development is the bank, the soup can bank, and to see that kind of the evolution of how that bank came about, and the paper fold up ones, and all the different things that went into that kind of coming about was really, really great. So those are the things that I think kind of stood out to me, and just a few little stories that I wanted to tell. And then I will post into here the chat. I'll post into the chat that information that I spoke about. I'll just close with just saying again, thank you so much. I love the history that you preserve there, and the work that goes into it, and all the care you take to preserve both artifacts, photos, film, everything. What a great experience it was for us, and to be part of that, and to be able to share this documentary and book and all the images are really a credit to you and your work.
Thanks, Paul. I'll do what I do best, which is to take credit for the work that has been happening for a long time here. And I do want to call out two people that are on the call, as you mentioned. Sarah Hawkinson, who is now at the Swedish American Museum. She is almost solely responsible for the Covenant Companion being available online, coordinating the thousands of pages of scanning and the metadata for that. And then Rebecca Baker, who's currently in the role, who has done cleanup on the photo collection earlier this week, and was really helpful in setting up the displays at the gala. We'll now kind of transition to a question and answer time, but I'll take my ability as host to ask the first question, which I think is for everyone, for Bonnie and Bryce, and for you, Paul. How do you think this history, the history of Covenant World Relief and Development, how does it connect to the world today? Like, how does it connect? And then this history has had a number of different outcomes, kind of a book, that a more scholarly book, images, a film. And how do you make that connection happen? So it's kind of a two-part question, I guess. Like, how do you think this history connects to the world today? And then how do you make those connections?
I think Paul should start on that.
Paul, you got put on the spot here.
Yeah, I would say that the connection, the first question that you asked, the connection to the past and the future is one thing that struck me and is mentioned in the film is so many of the themes of the films and the things that we saw are still things that we're fighting and working to end today. So there's films about hunger, there's films about drought, there's films about water needs, and to see all those things, and I think you could look at it just a couple of different ways. One is like oh my gosh, we're still fighting the same things. Uh, but I think it's also of where would it be? Where would it be without organizations like ours or other organizations that really work to end some of these things? And it probably is going to be a constant battle, and we're going to keep fighting it. But that really struck me as something from the past that's also here in the future. Um, so that would be how I would start that. I did have a question. There was a
And I
question
think I would,
if you want me to answer this really quickly, Andy, from Mark Olson on the size of the dinner. And yeah, we had probably about 50% from within Chicago area and 50% that were either going to be midwinter attendees from pastors to churches to the Next Gen conference, probably about 150 Next Gen. North Park University was gracious to sponsor their enrollment, so our Next Gen attendees did not need to pay for the gala. But we were thrilled with the size of it. And if you remember 2 weeks ago on Sunday, it the weather report was not what it had been. So they kept saying the snow was going to stop in the morning, and it just never stopped. It snowed the whole day, but it didn't stop anyone from getting there. And so we were really thrilled by that.
Bonnie and Bryce, how do you
Andy, I
think?
think I would start to answer that question uh, in these ways. First of all, I think what Covenant World Relief and Development does today has is what it's been doing, is what Covenanters have been doing since 1885, really since before. As you may know in here, we talk a lot about pietism.
Mhm.
And pietism, as it's, well, I don't want to go into all that, but it really means that you do something. It's not just
Mhm.
individual, it's corporate. There are ways in which pietists said, there are things you really need to do that have to do with biblical justice. So God's glory for neighbor's good, it's the neighbor's good part that comes out of that pietist heritage. And you can see that as a through line that goes all the way in the covenant context from the organization of the denomination as mission societies all the way up to the present. And I think Covenant World Relief and Development, in effect, carries that through line that goes way, way, way back. So that's one point. Secondly, as it turns out, there are a lot of denominations and parachurch groups that started relief agencies right after World War II. That was not uncommon. What the Covenant did was not uncommon because it was war related. What then becomes interesting is how those agencies evolve over time. And, sort of goes through a period in the 50s, 60s of responding to natural and human caused disasters. But now at the end of the 20th century up through today, the whole emphasis is really on social justice. And I think what's so unique about Covenant World Relief is is that it works with identifiable partner groups in places that are materially poor and works as equals, works as not us to them. You don't do things to people, but you do things with people. And I think the whole model of working with partner groups makes Covenant World Relief and Development really unique amongst many of those other either parachurch or denominational groups.
Mhm.
And I don't think I knew that. I think we had to spend the years we did understanding, reading, writing, talking to realize how to realize the role of pietism that continues through it, and secondly, how institutionally it's changed over time to come to the model where it is today.
Hmm.
So I think that's an answer.
Sounded like an answer to me. I watched the film for the first time at the gala. I didn't get a sneak peek or anything here, and one of the things that struck me was from this archival footage that I've seen. They edited it down so that they had the word partner repeated, kind of in all these clips of these old films to kind of underscore this history of partnership. I thought that was a really interesting, engagement. I guess I'd use or take use of that archival of resources to kind of underscore something in kind of an artistic way, and I thought it was wonderful. So um, I have more questions, but I will officially stop talking and open up to the floor. So if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, you can. If you prefer to type it in the chat, I can read those chats out loud. So yeah, what questions do we have for Bonnie, Bryce, and Paul? Mark Swanson's asking, where will the ebook be available? I presume referring to the Scholars Edition.
Well, I think Andy, that'll probably be hosted at Covenant Archives.
Yeah,
That would
I
be
know we've
our
talked
hope.
about this.
That's what we've been talking with you about.
Yeah, I think it'd be. I mean, it'd be a fine addition to the first collection of Covenant literature. So yeah, once we get it, I'll make it available there, and it'll add to the history. So, um, yeah.
Yeah.
Helen, I see you have come on camera.
Hello.
Do you have a question?
No, but I think this is wonderful. I've been
Oh,
copying down what Paul wrote on, so I can, go into that later.
yeah. And if you, we'll send an email afterwards, and we'll try to include this information from Paul here about how to look at the film and how to order your copy of the book.
That would be great.
Yeah, I'll make a note of that.
Interested in the whole thing. We are working on it's very close to done, but we will have a film screening guide that'll come with suggestions of how to screen it and then discussion questions, so you could use it in a variety of different ways.
If is that film something that we could show at church for our missions emphasis?
We'd love for churches to do that. There's a church in Washington that's going to invite.
Paul, at least for me, Paul, your audio is a little choppy or soft now. I don't know if it's just me.
Today, that is as good as it's going to get. So I apologize for.
You're good. I think I heard Paul say that a film guide is going to come out, and it would be perfect for use in a congregational setting.
Okay,
yeah.
Great.
Well, Wes, your question is kind of more for me. How much of the archives has been digitized, and what is the next set of collections planned to be digitized? I always feel a little torn answering this question. So we have really strong digital collections. We're part of a consortium of academic research libraries in Illinois, and our digital usage, we're like fifth in the state, but we're behind people like the Chicago History Museum, the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. We're behind these big players, so we really do fight way above our weight class in terms of our size and things here. So our collections are really strong and get used. The material that we've digitized thus far are mostly either core research materials that would be hard to find, like reference materials that would be hard to find, or in a few cases we've digitized because the originals are too fragile to support access to them. So it's mostly for use or for preservation reasons. But it's still a fraction of a single percent, where it's under 1% of our collections here are available online. And that's for a whole host of reasons, some of which are practical, some of which have to do with copyright and privacy and permissions. So we are still kind of actively digitizing material. We actually don't have plans for a big new collection to be digitized at this point. Audio visual stuff continues to be a priority for us from a preservation point of view. But as Paul was kindly didn't point out, it's tough for us to deal with that because it's expensive to digitize. And then, not to get too deep into the weeds, but one film might be on several reels. It might have the image on one and audio on another, and putting those together into one kind of product that people could actually use is surprisingly time consuming and difficult. So, but it does support these very interesting uses of it. So audiovisual is something we're kind of continually looking at. And then we're also actually doing some metadata cleanup. So making sure our descriptions are accurate and kind of up to standards that are set by the archives world. So sorry to kind of dodge your question there a little, Wes. We don't have a big glamorous project in the works, but we're kind of continuing the work of digitizing material and meeting research needs. Um, oh yeah, and Mara points out, yes, digitizing is one of the things we do, but we also do get a new, donations of material. We help researchers of all sorts. Yeah, it's a balancing act.
And
Uh,
Andy, for example, is coming down to Swedish Hospital next week to get all the boxes from there. And though a
yeah,
lot of that was scanned in for the History Wall project, a lot of it wasn't. So a whole new collection of information.
yeah. We have ballpark like 20,000 boxes of material down here, like in all form, paper, photograph, the photo collection is about 30,000 images deep. And that's just what we have described at the item level, but that work of describing images at the item level is slow and requires expertise and like who's who, what is this photo of? So yeah. I could talk about this for quite a while, but I want to make sure we take advantage of Bonnie and Bryce and Paul. Are there other questions kind of about that research project or that they could answer? Hmm. All right. I feel like I've let it sit for long enough. Um, thank you so much, Bonnie and Bryce. Paul, thanks for all the work you've done. I looked at the book. I did not get a chance to read it yet, but it's on my list. It looks wonderful. I saw a draft of it, which was so interesting and kind of wonderful to read. So really encourage you to pick up a copy if you can to view the film either yourself or with your church community, um, and support the good work that happens with Covenant World Relief and Development. I don't have notes about next time, but this is the fourth installment. I think there are three more. So the second Wednesday of every month at noon Chicago time. That's where we'll be. I believe that next month is. Oh, I should check. I won't say next month. I'll just say the ones that are coming up. Hannah Andre, the dean in the seminary, is going to present research on the history of women's ordination, which is celebrating 50 years this year. Other folks, Mark Safstrom and Eric Strom, are going to be talking about the history of Covenant Point, which celebrates 100 years this year. And then finally, in May, we will hear about how the archives has supported research related to Alaska. So some translation work from Swedish to English, and then other kind of ongoing history projects related to the Covenant's work in Alaska. So I hope to see you all next month. Again, the second Wednesday at noon. The email you get after this will have more details about that. So thanks for tuning in. I'll linger for questions, but I will officially end the formal part of the presentation. So